There were 2 months left until graduation, and I was preparing to ask Tracy to be my date at the prom. I know that some guys have been asking their girlfriends for 3 months before this date, but I didn't need it because Tracy was my girlfriend. She's always been my girlfriend, and graduation was a done deal. Damn, graduation has been a done deal since I was 5 years old. Tracy Batson and I were neighbors because her family moved in next to mine when I was 5 and she was 4. We met a few days after the family moved in. I was playing alone in the backyard when I noticed someone running towards me. I got up in time when she reached me. A short-haired blonde girl with green eyes and freckles all over her face. She reached out to me and hugged me tightly. I let her do it. When we uncoupled, she knelt down next to me and started playing with my Tonka trucks. That was all. Without fanfare. Best friends forever. Tracy and I didn't play together every day. Sometimes she wanted to play with the girls. Sometimes I want to play with the boys. But most of the time we played with Tracy, me and the others when they showed up. I knew perfectly well that she was a girl, but for some reason I never looked at her the same way I looked at other girls. Sometimes other girls had lice. I don't know why, but Tracy didn't have that. We remained best friends in elementary, middle, and high school. While other boys and girls were starting to pair up, Tracy and I were already a couple. Other couples went on dates, and Tracy and I just did things together. It wasn't a date. We just did what we always did. I was 14 and she was 13 when we first kissed, and like everything else for us, it was done easily and without fanfare. We were leaving the evening cinema. I put my arm around her waist, she clung to me, and we kissed. It wasn't anything special for the two of us, although I knew we both felt something electric. After that, we kissed many more times. Our parents seemed to take everything for granted. I was part of her family, and she was part of mine. I could count on being yelled at or spanked if I misbehaved in her house, and the same thing happened to her if she misbehaved in mine. Our friends also took our relationship calmly, perhaps because it seemed like we were always together. It was clear in the neighborhood that we were together, and no one tried to come between us. Outside the neighborhood, things were different, and guys were running after Tracy. She was developed in all the right places, and although I was always worried that she would find someone she wanted more than me, I never worried too much because we were US. She was mine, and I was hers. The end of the story. At least that's what I thought. As always, after classes ended, Tracy met me at the car in the parking lot. As we were driving home, I looked away and asked where she wanted to go after graduation. Silence. 5 seconds. 10. 15. It wasn't good. I pulled over as soon as I could find an empty seat. Stopping, I parked the car in the parking lot and turned my full attention to Tracy, who started crying and looked like she had just eaten a bag of lemons. I am. I've already told Justin Morrow that I'm going to prom with him. Stevie, Tracy stammered. I caught my breath for a second. I shook my head in disbelief. Then he looked straight into Tracy's eyes. He invited me last month. I thought it would be great to go with someone else. You know, another guy, another perspective. You know, there's always me and you. What's wrong with that? Garg. I thought my head was going to explode. What's going on, Tracy? Another perspective? You're kidding me. She burst into tears. I started reaching out to comfort her, but then common sense hit me on the head. We, Tracy. We. I shouted. You're my girlfriend. My girlfriend won't go to prom with another guy just for a different perspective. Look, Stevie, I've never dated another guy. And you've never dated another girl. You know you're leaving for college in a few months, and we're both going to have to date other people. At least, Tracy, why didn't you wait until I left? That would be kind-hearted, at least. Tracy was mumbling something, sobbing. I wasn't even listening, turning on the show and driving us home. At home, I grumbled for 4 days. I didn't go to Tracy's house, and she didn't come to me. Both parents were not born yesterday. I found out from Joyce that Tracy is going to the prom with Justin Morrow. Joyce cried when she said that to me. Stevie, do you want to add something? Mom asked at dinner on the 4th day. Dad raised both eyebrows. My younger sister, Ellie, was fidgeting in her chair. Just that you and Joyce can stop making wedding plans for us. We're sorry, Stevie. It's really a pity. You know, if you need to talk. Dad said, does anyone need 2 tickets to the prom? I asked, trying to sound like I was joking. Justin Morrow was more of an acquaintance than a friend. I had no idea if he knew that Tracy and I were a couple, but it didn't matter. If Tracy really was mine, she would have told Justin about it, not agreed. I walked around moping for a couple of weeks, and then, getting out of the car one day after school, I heard Allison Warnock giggling about something with several friends. Allison was the younger sister of Laura Warnock, who lived across the street from me and hung out with a group of friends in the neighborhood. Laura has been friends with me for about as long as Tracy has been and was probably Tracy's second best friend after me, at least until 3 weeks ago. Allison was a freshman at our high school, about 6'3", skinny as a rail, with blonde hair and absolutely charming. I've known Allison since I was 2 years old, and we've always gotten along great. She was a little weird and crazy, and she was often my partner when we had chicken fights on the lawn or in the pool, and she sat on my shoulders. It was so light that I could carry it with one hand, which gave me the opportunity to use my free hand to fight, knocking out a clear advantage for our team. Anyway, up to this point, I had never seen Allison as anything more than just a skinny little sister, but I admit I always had a special place for my chicken wrestling partner. Damn, I already had tickets, so I made a somewhat awkward request. I called her away from the twins, another pair of 15-year-olds from our neighborhood, and just asked her to be my date. Her alabaster face turned bright pink, and she lowered her eyes to the ground. I knew I had caught her off guard. Shouldn't you ask my sister, since you're not going with Tracy? You've always been one of her closest friends, she said, looking up at my face at the last second. No, I have to ask the Warnock girl I really want to go with, and that's you, even if there won't be chicken fights at the prom. I'm not asking you to be Tracy's replacement. I'm asking you to be my friend. Can I ask Mom and Dad first? I'd like to go, but until I turn 16, Dad says I have to ask permission. Oh yeah, I don't want Big Ed to be mad at me, I replied. Allison's father, Big Ed, was a bear, 1'90", 100 kilograms, and no sane person would want him to be mad at him. But as much as I was afraid of Big Ed, I knew that the real force in the family was Allison's mother, Barbara, who was a fully Irish Catholic, whom everyone read about in legends. God forbid the boy should touch even one of his daughters. Barbara would surely rip off both his ears and scratch out both his eyes. There was a phone call in the evening, but not to me. Barb called my mom's boss directly, and I heard Mom assure Barb in great detail that I would be a complete gentleman. When Mom gives her word, that's how it happens, which was fine with me. The next morning, I didn't even have time to get to my locker, as Laura was already in front of my nose and cursing. What the hell, Stevie? Am I a chopped liver? We've been friends forever. We spend half our time together, and you're inviting my little sister to prom? What happened? Laura practically shouted at me. I raised my hands in surrender. Until a few weeks ago, I was sure I was going to prom with Tracy, but I guess I was wrong, I said. After she, figuratively speaking, kicked me in the balls, I wasn't going to go at all. Then I decided that I would go, but only to have fun, without any attachment. Allison makes me laugh, and I want to laugh. We'll go have some fun, and then I'll graduate and go to study. Laura let out a small scream, and then inhaled about half the oxygen in the hallway while everyone was watching us. She looked at me intently and then snorted. I looked at everyone who was looking at me, shrugged my shoulders, and went to my first lesson of the day. I think I've lost 2 friends. The graduation was as good as I could have hoped for. Allison looked amazing in her navy blue dress, with her hair styled and made up for the first time. I never once had the desire to throw her over my shoulders for chicken fights, but I definitely had the desire to pull her closer to me for a slow dance, which I did. Already on the second dance, she clung to my body, and so we danced until the end of the evening. Yes, I saw Tracy and Justin from afar several times during the evening. Yes, she looked great in a pretty tight-fitting green dress, and, to tell the truth, Justin looked pretty solid in a black suit. When I saw them, they seemed to be enjoying themselves. To tell the truth, I didn't try to pay attention to Tracy and Justin because I really enjoyed spending time with Allison. She was both a funny and funny kind of skinny chick. Several times I thought that in the next year or so she would turn into a real heartbreaker. I almost wished I could stay here to see this prediction come true. We went for a very late breakfast at the local IHOP with a few other couples, then I drove us home. I parked in front of my house and led her across the street to the porch. Then I plucked up the courage and kissed her for real good night, with a little tongue, before she hugged me tighter and ran her tongue over mine. After that, we did it a second time, until I heard movement outside the Warnock's door and decided I should take the hint and walk home. The following Saturday morning after prom, Tracy walked into my house, as she had done for many years until 2 months ago. Mom and I looked at each other in surprise when Tracy came over to the couch in the family room and moved closer to me. She sat in silence for about a minute while we watched Premier League football, and then whispered in my ear that we needed to talk in the backyard. I protested, but caught the look on Mom's face and realized I had to follow Tracy outside. Don't you think this has been going on long enough, Stevie? Graduation has been over for a week now, and you still won't talk to me? As I told you, it was a one-time thing. I've been dating someone else, and so have you, although I have to say you surprised me with your choice. You definitely didn't make Laura happy. I wasn't trying to make Laura happy. I was trying to make myself happy, I grumbled. Okay, you've made yourself happy, I think, but now it's time to get back to normal. I'm back, I'm yours and you're mine. At least until the next time you decide to take a break from me, I interrupted. Tracy looked confused. I can't say that I didn't like the prom, but it's over. We're back to being ourselves, Stevie, she said. No, Tracy, we'll never be us again, I said. You're done with us forever. Don't be like that, Stevie, Tracy replied, fighting back tears. I got up from my chair, went into the house, took the car keys and drove away. An hour later, after Tracy gave up and went home, Mom texted me. Over the summer, before I left for college, I met Allison several times. We always had fun, but we were both realistic. I had 4 years of college ahead of me, and she had 3 years of high school. We agreed that it was better for us to go our separate ways, although we did not rule out casual dates in the summer when I would be at home. A little after New Year's Eve, Tracy called me from school. It was her senior year and prom. She called to tell me that she was making amends for ruining my graduation, and that I could invite her to prom this year. It's a generous offer, I told her, but I'm just not ready for it. I assumed that maybe Justin was free. Since they had a good time last year, maybe they should repeat it. She quietly hung up the phone. In the summer, when I was at home, Tracy sometimes came to me and made tackles that we should be together again. She even hinted to both my parents that she and I should get back together. It also explains why I had to endure an hour-long lecture from her mother about how good we were together, and that I shouldn't see the forest for the trees. Of course, because of our whole story with Tracy's mom, I was polite, but I still couldn't give her an answer that would please her. For his part, Tracy's father couldn't look me in the eye. I think he agreed with my position, but he didn't want to say it out loud. I knew Allison had her share of dates. After all, she turned into a real stunning beauty when she finally got in shape. I went on dates too, because I'm a pretty decent guy with a healthy attraction. I tracked Allison enough to know that she didn't have a steady boyfriend in the middle of senior year. So when I was at home for Christmas, I asked her if she wanted me to be with her for graduation. She smiled broadly and said, yes. 3 years have made Allison's body and mind more mature, but although she has turned into a real hot babe, she has never allowed her beauty to overshadow her cheerful character. We had a great time at the prom, and after that it was even better when we got to know each other better for the first time. Hoping for such a result, I booked a hotel room, but I wasn't going to push Allison to do it. We started the evening as great friends, and just like 3 years ago, Allison pressed her whole body against me every time we went out on the dance floor. Her lips tasted delicious, and we spent a lot of time kissing. Towards the end of the evening, I asked if she wanted to have some more fun with her friends, or if she wanted to go to the hotel with me. She didn't look surprised or upset that I had booked a room for us. I had a bottle of champagne and a container of strawberries in my room. We took our time getting into bed, kissing, joking, laughing, and talking. I don't know how long we did this until we were in front of the bed, where I carefully began to take off her burgundy silk and lace dress. Since Allison was an ordinary child, I assumed she wasn't a virgin, but I didn't think she had too much experience in bed. We clung to each other quietly for a while before we started talking and laughing again. We got dressed and left, and I brought Allison home by 1:45 a.m., 15 minutes ahead of Big Ed's deadline for the night. During the summer after her graduation, Allison and I were together, but we went our separate ways again when she left for her freshman year of college in Iowa and I left for my senior year of college in Indiana. We occasionally corresponded by email, and although we remained great friends, we both knew that we were moving in different directions. I was graduating from college in May, and she had 3 more years of study ahead of her. They say that time is everything, and it seems that our time just did not coincide. I had to give Tracy credit for her persistence. She kept her finger on the pulse of the game, periodically sending emails, gently reminding me that she would drop everything in an instant if I just said the word. I politely reminded her that our ships had parted at night, and we both had our own lives. I got a good job at a medium-sized accounting firm in Ohio and started studying for a master's degree, thinking that one day I would want to become a college professor. I know it sounds abstruse, but I really enjoyed communicating with people through mathematics. While taking college courses, I communicated with many female students, and my social life developed more in this direction than in any other. until Molly entered my world and pulled me out of my meager existence. Molly was a divorced woman with a child who had recently started working in the audit department at my firm. With long, bright orange hair, freckles everywhere, and skin whiter than white, she was a perfect redhead. Everyone understands what I'm talking about: coffee and cake for a colleague in the break room. Obviously, she took her cake a little before me, but when she turned to leave the table, the square of cake that she had just taken flew off her plate, and in an attempt to stop it, she jerked her left hand to the side, creating splashes that landed on my chest. It hurt like hell, I remember that, but when I looked up, I was lost in those green eyes, and suddenly I stopped feeling pain. It was only when another employee rushed to me with paper towels and started soaking that I felt the touch again and screamed in pain. Molly immediately started apologizing, and I went to the bathroom. An hour later, those mesmerizing green eyes appeared in my office with another piece of cake, and 5 minutes later I had an appointment for next Friday night. I must admit, I was shocked when I rang Molly's doorbell on Friday night and a teenager with red hair answered it. He must have been at least 16 years old, which means Molly was probably older than I had assumed. Not that I was put off by her age, but I was surprised when she admitted that she was 42 years old. She later said that she had been married for 16 years and divorced for 4 years. She looked great in what I would call a mom's version of the notorious little black dress, as it was a couple of centimeters above her knees. I tried not to be too conspicuous, because I knew that her son was watching me. Perhaps because Molly was raising a teenager, she, despite her age, seemed very well versed in the world of youth. It took me about 5 minutes to come to terms with it all, but after that everything seemed the same as on any other date I've ever had. We enjoyed a delicious meal and then went to a concert organized by the local Philharmonic. Not the wildest date I've ever been on, but good enough that I realized I wanted to try again. Maybe it has to do with her age, but I was a little shy about making a move on Molly. She was beautiful enough, of course, but there was something about her that scared me, to say the least. However, she clearly noticed that something was wrong, and on our 6th date she brought up the subject. We had a bourbon and barbecue night, and then went to the country western dance club to dance a little. None of us had ever danced before, but we had a great time learning from veterans at the club. I held on to Molly all night, and I knew that she was picking up the vibrations of the night, but I was again wondering how to start when Molly put her hands behind my head and pulled me to her for a hot kiss. "I know you're worried about my age, Stevie, but I'm not going to break the buzz. We have to finish this night horizontally," Molly whispered. An embarrassed smile spread across my face from ear to ear. I took her by the hand and led her out of the club. Molly might be the oldest woman I've ever slept with, but she was incredibly energetic and knew how to use her experience. About a year later, an invitation to the wedding came in the mail and made me slow down abruptly. It turned out that Allison had graduated from college about a year earlier and was getting married to a man she dated in her senior year. We stopped texting and I lost sight of her. She now lived in Illinois, but the wedding was to take place in New York, where her parents still lived. I took Molly with me and explained how everyone fits into this neighborhood holiday, because that's exactly how it really was. My parents were there: Big Ed, Barb and Laura, Tracy and her parents. Drew Goldstein seemed like a nice enough guy, but it took me a lot of internal reflection to be happy for Allison. I've never been able to get over my feelings for her, but it just wasn't meant to be. Shit happens, you have to move on. However, I probably didn't make either Allison or Drew happy when she first introduced him to me a couple of days before the wedding. We had such a history, and I was probably as close to my older brother as she was to accepting me as such. "I'm very happy for you, Drew, but listen to me. And listen carefully," I said sharply, keeping a smile on my face. "If you hurt her, I'll break your nose. Understood?" Both Allison and Drew seemed slightly taken aback by my statement. Drew was smart enough to nod in understanding when I shook his hand. Later, Laura said that Big Ed approved of my threat. Tracy had obviously finally forgotten about me. She appeared with her husband in tow and with a belly from pregnancy. He looked like he came out of a 60s biker movie, and neither Joyce nor Tim Batson looked very pleased. Tracy and I barely talked all weekend, but we were polite when we talked. Molly and I never sought exclusivity, and I knew she was dating others, while I preferred not to. We never discussed the others until a few months after Allison's wedding, when Molly cooked a sumptuous Irish dinner and told me she had news for me. It turned out that she was dating a nice guy a couple of years older than herself almost all the time she was dating me, and he started talking about exclusivity. She decided she had to give me this information. I wasn't completely surprised by this statement, and certainly couldn't blame her if she wanted to go for a more secure relationship. Besides, The two of them probably had more in common. She started to show emotion and even seemed to apologize, but I gently stopped her. Never apologize for doing what's right for you, baby, I said. You've always been completely open and honest with me. If you want commitments, and he can give them, but I can't, then it's on my conscience. You are a beautiful woman and a beautiful soul. I hope everything works out great for you too. I really meant what I said. I got up from the table, kissed her very gently on the cheek, and left. In a conversation about 5 years later, my mom broke the somewhat sad news about Allison's divorce. I say somewhat sad because, to tell the truth, I still had some feelings for this woman, but in fact it's always sad when someone's marriage goes down. From my point of view, marrying a person thinking it's going to be a lifelong commitment, and when it turns out not to be, it's devastating. I felt sorry for her, but I didn't try to contact her because we weren't in touch. I was more than surprised when I received a message from Allison 6 months later. It read, "Are you still there?" I guess that she wasn't sure if I still had the same phone number. I was very surprised to see who the message came from, but I didn't reply to it for about 3 days. In the end, I answered meaninglessly, "Yes." It took another 3 days before I got a call one evening. "Do you have a few minutes for an old friend?" "What is it?" she asked. "I really need to spend some time with a non-relative or a friend who is trying to cheer me up. I know we haven't talked much over the years, but you've always been honest with me and made me laugh. It's been a long time since I've enjoyed a good laugh. Not being a beautiful woman, I didn't realize how hard it was for Allison in the years since our breakup. In college and after, she always chose a date. She was invited to all sorts of events and social gatherings, and it must have been exhausting. When she married Drew, the handsome son of a prominent financier from Illinois, it seemed that the good times would last forever because they both got good jobs at his father's company and enjoyed a very comfortable life in a new house in the suburbs of Chicago. Everything went awry when she found out that Drew had been cheating on her for at least a year with the daughter of an old family friend. I agreed to go to Chicago for a long weekend to give her a shoulder to lean on. I know she sounded upset on the phone, but I was shocked when she appeared at the door of her apartment in a bad part of the city. She looked like she hadn't eaten or showered in days, and her eyes seemed haunted. "What happened to my little chicken wrestling girlfriend? She looked like shit." I'm sure my mouth opened, and then she started crying. Like most guys, I get completely lost in the presence of a crying woman. All I could do was hug Allison and escort her back to the apartment. We spent the next 2 hours on the battered couch while she sobbed into my shirt and confusedly talked about her grief. After learning about the betrayal, Allison kicked Drew out of the house, but then Drew's father intervened. Allison didn't read the prenuptial agreement she signed with Drew, and 9 months later Allison was divorced and living in this apartment, with no job and almost no life. Drew's father made sure that his human resources department destroyed Allison's chances of getting a good job in the area, and she worked at a dry cleaner. Allison and I talked a lot on Friday night and all day on Saturday. As soon as I came to her apartment, we hugged. But after that, the most physical thing we did was occasionally hold hands during a conversation. Everything was somehow wrong. It also made me uneasy to see Allison so broken and the way her life was going. I needed to give her a clean exit, so I turned to the only man I knew who cared about Allison more than me. I explained the situation to Big Ed as I understood it, and he promised that he and Barb would be in Chicago the next morning to take Allison home to upstate New York. When I broke the news to Allison, she almost tore my ears off, but I knew it was the right move. When I helped her pack her meager belongings, she still called me all the names she knew. I am a 30-year-old woman. I don't need to be treated like a 5-year-old girl, asshole. That was one of the nicest things she said to me while I was helping her pack on Monday. I kept in touch with Allison on a weekly basis through Big Ed and Barb. Allison stubbornly refused to talk to me. My life went on. I've been dating several women, including one for almost a year. I was already close to asking her an important question when she told me that she had met someone she wanted to date and did not want to cheat on me, so we needed to break up. I said I appreciated her honesty and returned my deposit for the engagement ring I bought. About 6 months after sending Allison back to New York, I took a couple of days off and went to Chicago for the weekend. I did some homework and was waiting outside Drew Goldstein's Mercedes when he left work at 5 o'clock on Friday afternoon. When I approached him in the parking lot, he didn't seem to remember me right away, but as soon as I took my seat, I saw a spark of recognition flash in his eyes. But he didn't have time to raise his hands, and I attacked him with all the strength that was in my body at 1 meter 83 and 82 kilograms. I felt his nose explode and blood flew everywhere as he fell to the ground. I warned you what would happen if you hurt Allison. Apparently, you forgot. But I'm not, I said quietly. Interestingly, although there were many people in the parking lot who saw me hitting Drew, none made a move to help him or prevent me from leaving. I guess the boss's son just wasn't popular. Just a few hours later, I returned to Indiana, but I still expected the police to show up at my door because of my attack on Drew, and was surprised when it didn't happen. I was also surprised 2 weeks later when Allison called me. "A bird on my tail brought me that you had Drew's nose shaved a couple of weeks ago," Allison said. "I thought that by threatening him all these years, you were just acting like a jerk. Now I don't know how to thank you. By the way, Dad said he'd send you an 18-year-old bottle of Glenmorangie." I had another suggestion for how Allison could thank me, and I took a week off to help her with this. We spent most of that week together, and by the time I left to return to Indiana, we had become a monogamous couple, but at a distance. We lived at a distance for about 6 months, after which she moved to live with me in Indiana. Big Ed and Barb didn't fully agree to such terms, but given our history, they gave us some leniency. However, it only lasted about a year, because 2 months later Allison accepted my marriage proposal, and 10 months after that we got married. I love irony. So we got married exactly 17 years after our first date, my graduation. The epilogue. It may have taken us a long time to be together, but as they say, the good things are worth waiting for. Allison and I just celebrated our 30th anniversary at a party hosted by our children, Eddie and Rosalie, and their spouses. It wasn't always perfect, but it was as close as I probably deserve. By the way, we get a Christmas card from Tracy every year.